Welcome to the series of Oracle Fusion Middleware video lessons. In this video, I'm going to talk on XML. This is one of the prerequisites for Oracle SOA. So I will only cover the topics which are required for Oracle SOA development. So let me start with XML basics. So XML stands for, let me write down here. I don't have presentation to present it. So let me write down everything what I'm going to speak about this XML. XML stands for extensible XML stands for extensible markup language, and the main purpose of XML, or this is designed. The XML is basically designed, to store and transport data, and there is one more thing, it is designed to be both human and system readable, that is mission readable, human and mission readable. And again, the another one is, it is independent, software and hardware independent language, like software and hardware independent. Which is XML stands for extensible markup language. This is the full form. With this XML is designed to store and transport data. So when you're sending the data between two missions, so you need one standard form of language that is called XML. Here we are going to use it, and then the XML, the language which we're going to learn, this is again a human and mission readable format, which is designed to be mission human readable, and this is software independent also. So let me write in an example here, so that you'll be able to understand the XML format also. So let me say employee.xml. This is what XML I'm going to write it here to make you understand how the XML looks like. Say employee.xml is about an employee record which stores, as we mentioned, which stores the employee information here, something like database. We can use XML to store the data here. Say let me start with a tag employee. You can use any tag, I'll explain the syntax rules of XML also. So here I wanted to store the information, or you can say I want to store even a transport also of employee data. Like say every tag has an ending tag. I want to store as ID, the employee ID is 1, and the name of employee techno something, whatever, maybe ABC. So this is a sample XML which has the employee tag. Inside we have employee ID, employee name, that is ID and name. So this is employee number and this is the employee name. So this is the sample XML, and let me say you have system A and system B. Now I wanted to send some data to system B, to transport the data from system A to system B. That is the reason we have here employee.xml So let's say I have an XML. I'm going to use XML to communicate between system A and system B. System A and system B. So I'm going wanted to use XML as a language to communicate between two systems. I mean, across two systems. Something like for instance, there are two people, and both of them speaks in their own language, their own regional language. So what is the what is the language which we can use between two persons to make them communicate? Something like English. English is the language where you can uh, use between two people, or two people, if they know English each other, if they know English, they'll be able to communicate uh, easily. So something like, we are going to use, or XML is going to use for to communicate between system to system. All right. um, and extensible, yeah. So I'll try to cover up what is extensible here. So extensible here, now I have here employee record here. So I'm allowed to extend this, even though you have created this employee XML file. I can have one more entry here, age, one more element, age, something like this. So which is always extensible. Once you prepare the XML, that doesn't mean that is fixed. Though it is fixed, it will allow to extend whenever you want. I mean, based on the requirement. All right. So before moving to XML basics, hope you are aware of HTML language. HTML language. So which is similar to or XML. Let me try to differentiate. What is HTML and what is XML here. Maybe in differentiating here like this. Markup. So what is markup here? We have covered about extensible here. Where we can extend it, and markup. What does this mean? A markup. It's similar to HTML. I don't have any definition for this markup here. I can say it's similar to HTML. So something like usage of tags, similar to HTML tags. Now we're going to use the similar tags here. If you see it here, employee, though this is not something like HTML tag, but it is called a tag, but which is user defined. You are defining your own tags here. Whereas in HTML, you have to use the tags whatever defined by a W3 standard, or whatever defined in HTML. So what you call an XML, those things, here we call this as an element in XML. So I'll write down here XML, this is called element. So elements in full. I'll write HTML what this is called. In HTML, what we call this as tags. This is what we know so far. Before knowing about XML, this is what we used to call this as tags. Here we can call this as an element here. And the purpose of XML, as I mentioned, or which is designed to carry data. Whereas HTML, it is the main purpose is designed to display data. right? And as I mentioned just before, this is not a predefined tag in XML. So uh, not predefined. Predefined. HTML, if we say predefined, what I'm talking about, let's say h1 heading and say body. These are tags in HTML, something like this. These are all predefined. I'm not allowed to uh, create or write a tag something like employee in HTML, but whereas in XML we don't have these tags. You can define any tag, like this. In now onwards we can call this as an element, so we can define any elements here with any name. So in XML, it's not vast, but it has so many things here. Say there are so many standards here where I'm not going to cover everything, but I just wanted to list down here. Don't consider the spelling mistakes. So what are the things in XML? I'll start with XML. The standards, it has XML DOM, XML Ajax. You have. We have XML path, which is required even in SOA. We have XML DTD and XML XLST. Like this, and we're going to learn about XML schema, and you have XML services also. Let me write in capital letters. Services, and you have even XQuery also. So like this, you have so many standards in XML where I'm not going to cover everything here. Mostly, I'll be talking about XML schema and XML path as well. These are things you required to develop any SOA web service. So these are the standards in XML, and maybe I'll start with the syntax rules of XML. That makes sense here. Any XML should have these syntax, or should follow these syntax rules. Say XML document. We call the employee.xml is an XML document here, in our case here. So what this document contains? It contains elements. So here the XML document or XML documents must have a root element. So this is mandatory. It should have a root element, and every element should have a closing tag, like all XML elements. So now what does that mean by element? Element is something similar to tag in HTML, something like h1 tag, or something like a bold tag, italic tag. There are so many tags in HTML. So now in XML we call this all XML. All elements. No more. We're going to call it as tags. Must have a closing tag. Yep, it's an all XML element must be a closing tag. And this is a case sensitive, so all XML elements are case sensitive, and it should be properly nested. What they call say suppose if you start the element with employee, and you have to close with the proper nesting elements. So that is something XML elements must be properly nested. That's how it is. And we are talking about elements only so far. Another thing is an attribute here. Attribute, I'll tell you, attribute means here. So this is an element, employee element, where we define an attributes here, something like employee, group, whatever, and say we'll mention something like ABC. This is I'm calling it as an attribute. All right. Okay. Let me move on. So here I'm talking about an attribute. So XML attribute. Attribute, we call it a value. So attribute value or attribute values must be quoted. So as I just mentioned before, when I'm here, when I was writing about an employee attribute, I have placed an quote here. Something like we should have these quotes for each attribute in XML. I'll explain in detail, in the coming. Then, so this is the syntax rule. So every XML document must follow all these syntax rules. There might be some other rules also, but so far these are important, at least as per my understanding. Now, we have to understand one thing here. We should know how to write, and we should know the way to write an XML document here before moving to the next section. So how should I make? Okay, let me do one thing here. I'll move to MS Word to create a table. One second. I'll let you know what I'm talking about here. So here, this is an MS Word document. I'll quickly create one table here. So I wanted to have like this one table. So this is an organization. In organization, this is an employee table. So EID, employee has an EID as in column, and the name and age. So I have 3 columns here, and each one has different values. Age something. So I'll create one more row here. And then So this is a tabular format. Now I wanted to make or I want to create an XML to store this information, or I want to convert this table in an XML format. So now tell me, organization is the root if I wanted to convert in an XML format. Organization will have so many employees here like this, and or I mean organization will have an employee, and it can have maybe department. So like this, so many things. In organization we have the employee, department, and library, whatever. So here now in my way, the way we have to represent here, employee or organization is the root element. Org is a root element here, and this is the root element, and you have employee inside, employee here in employee. So it should have a proper tag. Can have so many employees, and in employee I'm closing this tag, and in this employee I'm going to have so ID, ename, and age. So ID, employee ID 1, ename, I think this is I should one of the syntax rule, ename ABC, like this, and we have age, so this is the way. Maybe I'm not considering the second row here, that's fine. I'm only considering the first row here. So here converting this table of data in an XML format like this: organization, employee, ID, ename, and age. So this is a simple way to carry data, and say if you have one more row here, I know how you represent that in XML. So I cannot write similar tags like this here, say to have one more record. Now this is a duplication of your elements, right? You will not be able to write like this in XML. So now you have previous data, assume you have the data like this and how you represent here. So there are different ways. I want to represent something like to separate out. I'll tell you this in the next section also, how to remove the conflicts inside an XML. There are chances in a given project where two guys are developing or two guys are writing an XML, and where there is a chance where they can use the same elements in their code. So to overcome those, we can use some one technique in XML that is called prefix. We will use that prefix in following discussion. So this here, now at least for now I want to write it in a way employee ID. I'll go for an attribute and I'll say something like this, employee ID 1, so that I can remove this. And employee ID, I can write like this. I mean, it has its own ways, just to make for the beginning, I just wanted to show like this. Oh man, okay. See, this is the way to represent the table in an XML format. So now by making our, this is called, you can assume this is an organization.xml file, alright? Or in short, even you can, you don't require to consider this. Sometimes, if you feel this is very, let me go up. Yeah, if you feel you wanted to make this as an XML simple format, just I'll remove the organization just for understanding purpose. I'll just make like this, and I'll remove this organization tag. I don't want to mention this here, and I don't want to mention even the second record also. See, I can make it like this. Employee as an employee tag, and even I can remove the attribute also. Just since it's a first XML for you, I'll make it simple EID, or it's an ID or one ID, right? So this is simple XML to convert the tabular format of data into or tabular. What I mean is here it's a database table. So I converted this into an XML. So now we are naming it as an organization.xml, which has the employee as a root element, and it has 3 elements inside. So now here there is one topic, simple elements and complex elements. So if you see it here, what is the simple element, what is the complex element? You can easily identify the simple element is an ID. It does not have any sub elements inside, and ename is another simple element, ag something. And if you see the employee has, this is the root element, and it has child elements also. So now you can call this employee as an complex element. So I'll say this as complex element, and I'll say this as simple element. Alright, okay. So now, so far what we have covered, we got to know how to write a sample XML, and we know we use XML to communicate between two systems, and we covered about to differentiate XML and HTML, and there are different standards in XML. There are around 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 2 more. I don't know about the full complete standards here, maybe more than this also. And we have covered about XML syntax rules, and then we have taken one table here and tried to convert into an XML, and we got to know about what is simple element and what is a complex element. So for now, this is the basics, or to write an XML. It has some other stuff also, but for now this is okay to start to jump into other topic. So the other important topic in SOA, so we should aware of XML namespaces. I'll try to cover this as much as I can. XML namespaces, this is very required, or this is very important in XML. Even it's important even in SOA standards also, to understand the WSDL file. I'll cover about what is WSDL, to web service, we use XML namespaces. So in short, at least to make it in a definition format, this XML namespaces provide XML namespaces provide a method to avoid conflicts or to avoid name conflicts. So XML namespaces will be used, or XML namespaces provide a method, or it will give you an option to avoid the name conflicts. So what are the name conflicts here? Even I was talking to you guys before also the name conflicts here in employee. I'll try to give another example because employee table is a bit confusing. Employee element is a bit confusing. I'll try to give another example here. So what is name conflict? So what is name conflicts here? So name conflicts, element names are defined. Say if you take the similar example, in an organization there are two developers working on one project. There's a chance where they can create their own tags here, because XML is not a predefined. XML does not have any predefined tags, or they use their own tags. That's the reason there is a chance where two developers can create the similar tags. I'll explain. Maybe I'll type it here in XML. In XML, element names are defined by developer. This often results in a conflict when trying to mix XML documents. So that is what I mean. After two developers, in a project, if they're writing some part of the project, two modules, and at the end of the day, when we are merging or when you're mixing these two XML documents, then we get these name conflicts. Documents from another XML or different XML application. Hope you got the meaning. I'll try to put an example here so that you can understand it very clearly. I have developer 1 who has written something like this. These are all simple HTML tags. I'm using exactly the same. Yep. Apples entity. I have one more table data, which is bananas td, and I'm closing the table row data here. And table, this has been written by one developer. Like say I can use HTML tags inside XML to carry the HTML, just like to create an table information here. And this is by developer 1. And by developer 2, he has created similar thing, table tag only. but his intention is not to create a T or TED tags or to store this kind of information. His intention is he's creating another tag, another element, sorry, uh, something like coffee table. So name, and the width of table is 100. And the length of table 120 something, whatever. So now what happens? Tell me. When end of the day, when you're mixing or when you're merging the code, you get to know it has different. It has created for different purpose. But when we are merging, both have both these two. People have developed same for different purpose, but both have the similar tags or similar elements. This is a small example, but I'll try to give you a solution for this. Um, if what happens if these XML XML fragments were added together, there is a chance for the conflict. So there would be name conflict. Both contain a table element, right? That's what I was explaining you. Element, but the elements have different content and meaning. Right? But elements have different content and meaning. That's what I'm saying. So how to, or what XML provides to overcome this? That is what the namespaces does, or in short the prefix does. So solving this problem, we should use the name prefix. Something I'll try to copy these, in fact copy and paste it, and I'll show you how to resolve that. Developer 1, here he has a table. So now I'm going to say this, I'm going to use prefix to solve this problem. Now I'll say this h something like this, and I will use h prefix for each tag here, and even for this, I mean for each element. Ch. Now I'll copy and paste, try to make it fast. HTD, here also the prefix, here also the prefix, here also the same prefix. And see, for this now I'm differentiating this data or these element with the prefix called h, and for the other table I'll use an f, whatever, anything you feel. I want to use f to differentiate. F here, and say f, and say f prefix for each and every element. I'm saying f and F here, even for length F for each element, and for table. So this is how I'm resolving the conflicts. So what is that solving? The name conflict using a prefix, right? Yes. Then is this prefix is okay, or is this what we required in XML namespace? No. When we are using prefixes in XML, a namespace for the prefix must be defined. So it won't work exactly like this unless you define the namespace for this prefix, right? I'm just trying to say we use prefix to overcome the name conflicts, but what else we have to do? We have to define this prefix with the namespace, right? I'll tell you now. The namespace, yeah. So when using prefixes in XML, a namespace for the prefix must be defined. That's what I'm saying. When using prefixes in XML, a namespace for the prefix must be defined. So we have learned about a namespace here. If you go up, see, XML namespaces provide a method to avoid name conflicts, right? We are using XML namespaces to avoid the name conflicts. Here we learn how to add the prefix to each element to reduce the name conflicts. So it is not only enough just to define prefix, it will not work. So we have to use a namespace for the prefix must be defined. So we have to use a name, we have to define a prefix for the namespace, then we can use the prefix in each and every element. So let me try to copy the same data over here. Say H this table, or even everything. Let me copy everything so that it will be easy for you guys to understand. So I'm coming here. So what I'm trying to say, this element, since this element has a prefix, so there should be a namespace to define a prefix here. Say something like I'll define, these are all keywords which which has to be used exactly same. XML namespace, XML NS, that is what it is, XML namespace. And what is the prefix we define? That is H. So I'm defining is H here. And what does that mean, H? So I'm saying use this to define my namespace, HTTP something techno simplified, whatever, techno simplified or technosimplified.com/tr HTML, anything, HTML4. Since this is an attribute, okay, let me reduce the size. Okay, now it is clear. So now I'm defining the namespace with the prefix defined as an H. So I can use H for each and every element to reduce the name conflict here. And even for this, F table. I should have similar thing. Let me copy the complete namespace. I'll try to expand even namespaces again here. See, this table has this namespace, but from different site. So something like techno.com slash since it's a furniture information, something like furniture. So we are defining namespaces to have the prefix which will reduce the name conflicts, right? And yeah. Of course, each one will have another root element. Something like this have this one as root. Something like this root element. This is what the XML syntax rules. Okay, so now you got to know what is a namespace and how we can overcome the name conflicts. So not only the namespace can be declared with the table element here, even I can define at the root level also. So I can remove this. I'm allowed to do it at the root element also. Yep. Okay. Fine. And if these are all in one file, I can define this root element on top of this, and I can have another XML namespace. Oh, sorry, this is F. Right? Yeah, F and H here, because we are using prefix here F, so we are using F here, and this is the prefix of H, so we're using H in each and every element. So namespace, there is another thing here, namespace, the default namespace. The default namespace, where we can declare even for the XML, similar the way we are declaring here XML NMS, XML NS F with the prefix and the address. Similar to, there is another one called default namespace. How you differentiate this? If this does not have any prefix, that we call it as a default namespace, right? If it has a prefix, we can call it as a namespace, but if it does not contain this, we can call it as a simple one, a default namespace. So to make it in a sentence, a namespace which does not have a prefix, is called as default namespace. A namespace which does not have a prefix is called default namespace, which is very simple. If it does not have this, that is default namespace, and whatever elements we are defining under this root element, so that means if it does not have a prefix, and even if it does not have a prefix, that means these elements are defined using this namespace. And if you're having prefix, that means we are using prefix to define each and every element here. And another one, target namespace. Target namespace here. This is built. Okay, I'll try to put it in a Java. This is a bit difficult to understand. No, not bit. No, it's not very difficult. Just if you know the concept, you will be able to understand. Say, target namespace. In Java, say package A. Don't consider the syntax mistakes here. And I have class 1. This is one class, and I have another package B, class B. I have two Java classes here. I'm trying to give an example of, or for the target namespace, instead of writing a definition here. That would be easier. The target namespace, it's a package A which has two classes, class 1 and class, okay, I'll make it as okay, no problem, I'll make it as class 1 only, class 1 and class B. Then this is under package B and this is under package A. So what now, I want to invoke this class 1 inside this class. So how do we write that? In general Java, import package A dot 1. Consider if everything is under one folder, or whatever, it's not compulsory to be inside one folder. Just say this is package and package B. Now I wanted to import this class 1 into class B. Now I'm saying import A, that is A is package name here, and dot the class name here of 1. So that is how we invoke this class into the class B. So here, if you compare with the XML target namespace, see the package here we can call it as target namespace. And what we can call it as in class B, what is the target namespace? The package. Target namespace here. So to invoke this target namespace, or to invoke this class to the class B, how we are doing? We are having target namespace, that is A package name dot 1. That is the way we are able to access class 1 into class B. Right? This is similar even with XML also. In XML namespace elements, I'll try to explain that. Maybe before, this is what is the target namespace. I'll try to give an example even in using an XML. Before that, I have to cover XML schema, so that we can cover everything about the namespaces, default namespace, and target namespace. To understand that in a better way, I'll try to explain about XML schema as well. If you remember, XML schema is one of the standard here. XML schema. So XML schema we are going to cover here. So what is XML schema? XML schema, it's again similar to an XML only, but it is it describes the structure of an XML element. Say is similar. Take the same example: system A and system B and system B, both are communicating with the help of or with the XML, right? But how the system B can understand if the person defines an employee tag? How this system B will understand, while reading, how should system B will get to know about each element? This system B does not know about the XML structure or whatever. So here I'm trying to say the same thing. Here we use an XSD that is what XML schema. or in full form XML Schema Definition. We use XSD here. So both the systems communicate each other. Well, I can put an XML here itself. So they communicate each other with the help of XML, and they're able to understand each other with help of XML definition, right? Okay, to put it in a definition format, the XML schema, it describes the structure, the structure of an XML element. I'll try to explain in detail. For now, you understand we use an XSD to define the structure of an XML element, or instead of you writing it in a different way or understanding a different way, we define or the source or destination. I mean, source and destination. I'll try to cover in web service lesson. What is the source and destination? In simple, to come if there's a web service, who is the a producer and who is the consumer for web service. The person who produces a web service is a producer. The person who consumes the web service is we call a consumer. Like say the weather report guys, they become they become producers. They're XML producers. They will give a web service, an XML web service to the external world to consume. Now we can consume that XML and we can display the weather information in our application, in our web application. So we become consumers here. So here between source and destination, we use an XSD to define the structure of an XML document here. So that while the system be reading this XML, with the help of XSD, he will get to know the complete structure of an XML. I'll put in a let me complete this. It describes the structure of an XML document. It describes the structure of an XML document, right? So the full form here, XML Schema Definition. XML Schema Definition. XML Schema Definition. That is what XSD means here. And the purpose of this, I'll put it in the purpose of an XML. The purpose of an XML schema is the purpose of an XML schema is to define the legal building blocks of an XML document. Reduce the font. One second. What happened? Oh, it's a. So this is the purpose of an XML is to define the legal building blocks of an XML document. So if you say the elements and attributes, what does XSD has? The elements. The elements and attributes, that can appear in a document. So we are defining in XSD both elements and attributes. What are the elements and attributes can be defined in this XML document, and we define the number of child elements. the number of or even the number of and order of child elements, the number of child elements, and we define even data types also. I'll with an example I'll try to cover what I'm trying to say here. I'll try to cover with an example. So data types for elements and even attributes. And default and yeah, this is not required, but yeah, we have defined and fixed values. Defined and fixed values for elements and attributes. Say for elements and attributes, we define our values for each and every element and attribute before defining an XML itself, so that we, while writing the XML, we can follow the same here. So how the XML XSD document looks like? See, XSD document, it will have the XML tag, even it is there for XML also, but for even XSD it has, we'll define XML and version something. You know what? Okay, I'm not going to cover. Say about this XML version and all. It's by default when you create an XML in WSDL, it will come automatically. Even other elements also, but for now, okay, I'll say I don't want to miss anything, so I'll just say version. Say we say it's 1.0 something, and this is 1.0, and say this is an attribute, so we have to define. It's again an XML rule, XML syntax rule. And then it has an access. This is an XML, how an XML XSD document looks like, schema, access schema, something like it starts with access schema. Access schema. This is how the XSD document looks like, the syntax, or it has the root element, and it has an XML version tag. And let me define what is this the schema element. What is this schema element?